If you're new in town or just new to this whole podcast thing, you're tuning in to Law by Night, the podcast that discusses all things vampiric with no fear of breaching the Masquerade. In this episode, we shall discuss all there is regarding the Wyld, one of the three great spirits of the Triat in Werewolf the Apocalypse. We'll discuss its purpose, origins, and why it is revered and loathed by so many of Gaia's children.
We are Gaia's champions, her warriors and protectors. Part of this function is to understand and appreciate the fine balances of life in and around us, and we have failed. This is a difficult truth to swallow, but you must force down that painful pill, cub. Some may argue it is too late to make a meaningful difference, whilst others still cling to hope, whilst others wish to bring about the apocalypse, dine in the fiery balls of glory and honor. Whatever the truth may be, I hope to restore some semblance of peace to Gaia, even if that does mean delaying the dying inevitable. To do this, we must discuss the Triat, three of the greatest entities in the spiritual hierarchy: the Wyld, the Weaver, and the Worm. Some believe the members of the Triad are great spirits, whilst others think they are a different type of entity altogether. It's agreed that they are beyond mortal comprehension, and they are never encountered directly. Originally, the Triad were in balance, with the Wyld creating raw matter, life, and spirit, the Weaver giving form and function to these creations, and the Worm destroying them to make room for their creations. This is no longer the case. The Weaver has grown stronger through human influence, while the Wyld's power retreats as natural resources are depleted. The most dangerous of these, the Worm, feeds on evil and destroys indiscriminately, with its power growing and fears of an impending apocalypse. There are different stories about how these imbalances came about. One common tale is that the Weaver trapped the Worm, causing it to fall into madness. However, others claim that the Weaver is insane and the Worm's destructive nature is an attempt to restore balance. If it was not apparent, the Wyld is the weakest of the Triad. The Wyld serves as a generative force, giving rise to absolute chaos. The Weaver then brings order to this chaos before it is ultimately destroyed and returned to chaos by the Worm. While the other two aspects of the Triad went insane, the Wyld is gradually diminishing, being suppressed by the Weaver and recklessly destroyed by the Worm. The Wyld cub is not Gaia. Gaia, to many of the shapeshifters who call her mother, understand Gaia as life in spiritual and physical form, encompassing all that exists within, above, and beneath the earth, and the spirits that exist within the Umbra. To some, she is the personified son of the Triad, whilst others place her below. The Wyld, in either of these modes of thought, is the personification of the primal spiritual forces that serve her as a whole or something greater, but the Wyld is not Gaia. It is the fuel of nature, but it is not the nature. The trees around us and the grass you press between your fingers are things you and I can comprehend. It's tangible. Yes, the Wyld provides the raw force that becomes the life as we perceive and understand it. This makes our relationship with the Wyld incredibly simple. Without it, there would be no life, and we would not exist. Our physical forms are sculpted from these energies provided by the Wyld. This would mean that we serve the Wyld. Yes, well, as all fiends cub, there is nuance to be had. Yes, the Black Furies and the Red Talons are the two primary Grue tribes that honor the Wyld, and the Ratkin revere it more than Gaia, and we understand the Wyld is the foundation of life and the agony it now suffers. But the Wyld does not choose sides. A cancer does not choose how or what it spreads through. It, by itself, is not good or evil, but the matter's perspective influences our opinions on it. The Weaver may have fashioned humans as her minions, but the Wyld would provide viruses and illness to manage their numbers. The Wyld does not have much regard for the life it creates. This may bother you, but the Wyld does not love or hate. It is energy. forever changing and forever finding the shape through the control of the Weaver, which, as we have already discussed, is not a bad thing, assuming the Triat is in balance. In short, the Wyld is a possibility, and it is everywhere. But things did resemble some semblance of balance once, where the spirit and material worlds functioned practically as one, functioning in near symmetry. The Triat understood their places and how they resembled Gaia. If the Weaver is her logic, the worm is in the immune system, the Wyld was not only the blood, but the heart that pumped life through Gaia's metaphorical body. This mythical golden age has been sung by galliards throughout the ages, a time when everything seemed perfect and unified and united in a harmonious voice. But if history, actual history, has taught you anything, cub, you will know that means what is defined as harmony is often led through a dictatorship. From the perspective of the Wyld, the severing slaughtered any chance of balance. I speculated one host of theories to you when we spoke of the Weaver, and 10 theurges would give you 12 ideas, but what we know is that the Weaver and Worm would begin their clash, maddening them both. This probably fed and encouraged the evolution of creatures, learning the concept of cruelty and violence, becoming more selfish in the process, which would naturally cause an imbalance as tribes of mortals and Guru demonstrated ideas of superiority. Might meant right, and the old ways and spiritual faith would be lost through time, with the most modern of humans barely paying lip service to spiritual beliefs but worshipping their capitalist overlords. The result? The exile of the Wyld on the physical plane, barely able to pass through the gauntlet. Through time, pools of wild energy in the physical world, known as thresholds, have become incredibly rare. I have not seen them myself, but I have been told they exist, so take it with a pinch of salt. Do I dare suggest the Wyld too is mad? Yes. Yes, I do. But like the Worm and Weaver, it does share one another emotion. Rage. A lack of self-preservation as it tries to restore balance is the most popular theory, but let us not forget that the concepts of right or wrong are emotional states associated with creatures, and the Wyld is beyond this, and yet much simpler. The Wyld merely knows that there is a need for balance for survival, and survival is all that matters. So does it even feel rage then? You can ponder that in your own time, but it has certainly been driving to the edge of its tether, struggling to achieve balance, and it would swallow the world whole and create a new one to achieve Gaia's will, and I'm certain that the Wyld will serve as the ultimatum one way or another. Yes, it is trapped in the Umbra by the Weaver, but the Wyld is not weak. It just has a lack of focus or attention span if we humanize it for a moment. The Umbra is the Wyld's battleground, using guerrilla-like tactics, striking unexpectedly with varying degrees of success as it fights to return to the physical world. Seems quite extreme, does it not? Well, one has to be what you kids would refer to as harsh. Adherents of the Wyld, the aptly named Wyld spirits, notably only reflect its master, but as the most extreme and chaotic spirits within the Umbra, so I would advise you to stay clear of them should you enter the Umbra, and try to restrain any inexperienced theurge from summoning them. Rational is not a concept familiar to Wyld spirits. Wyld spirits are not bound to one personality or form either. They are unbound and fluid, reflecting the complex and confusing state of the Wyld. What is known is that Wyld needs Gaia to survive, and she is dying, slowly, painfully, by the hands of her children. The Wyld relies on Gaia's spirituality to fuel life, thriving in this connection. However, it prefers reshaping the world freely, rather than being confined. Few Guru grasp the real threat at play, while most elders, blaming the Worm or Weaver for the coming end, unaware that the chaos in Gaia reflects a deeper war in the Umbra. The Weaver and Worm clash in the physical realm, but the Wyld, mostly trapped in the Umbra, builds strength there. Its occasional attacks on the Weaver are erratic and hard to sustain. If the Wyld were to win, even skeptics would view the resulting reality as hell on Earth. Ironically, the Worm has suffered most of this cosmic struggle. The Wyld knows peace with the Weaver is impossible without the Worm, and without balance, it too would perish. As the apocalypse nears, the conflict grows more violent. Few truly comprehend the Triat's power plays, myself included, which are far beyond mortal and Guru understanding. While the Guru work to strengthen the Wyld, it sees their aid as incidental. The Wyld wouldn't mourn the loss of millions of Guru, viewing them as expendable in the greater battle, which puts its followers in peril, fighting both enemies and friendly fire.
To be kept updated, follow the Lore by Night VTM Instagram and Blue Sky pages to find out when we upload each episode. You can also find out by subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking on the little bell, and you'll be immediately notified when the latest episode is live. Until next time, farewell.